The recording light blinked red in the dark studio. Zorath Velkan sat in a chair that was too small for his aging body. His forearms rested on his knees, and the scars across his gray shell seemed to glow in the dim light. 40 years had passed since the war ended, but his hands still shook when he thought about it. Across from him sat Yenna, a young journalist with bright orange eyes and smooth skin that had never seen battle. She held a recording device and watched him with the curiosity of someone who had only read about the war in history files. "Thank you for agreeing to speak with me," Yenna said. Her voice was soft and respectful. "The historical archive needs stories from veterans like you. The younger generation does not understand why we signed the peace treaty." Zorath made a sound that might have been a laugh. It came out bitter and cold. "They do not understand because they were not there. They did not see what humans can do." "Then help them understand," Yenna said. "Help me understand. Our empire had conquered 17 species before we met the humans. We had the largest fleet in the galaxy. How did a species from a single star system make us surrender?" "We did not surrender," Zorath said quickly. His pride still burned after all these years. "We chose peace. There is a difference." Yenna tilted her head. "Is there?" Zorath was silent for a long moment. The memories were there, waiting in the dark corners of his mind. He had spent 40 years trying to forget them. The faces of dead friends, the sound of human weapons, the smell of blood and smoke on a world far from home. "I was young when the war started," he finally said. "Younger than you. I believed everything my commanders told me. Humans were primitives. Weak creatures made of soft flesh and thin bones. They had no natural weapons. No armor. No claws. They needed machines just to survive in space." He leaned forward, and the scars on his face caught the light. "I thought we would crush them in a single season. Every soldier in my battalion thought the same. We were fools." Yenna activated her recording device. "Tell me about your first battle." Zorath closed his eyes. When he opened them again, he was no longer in the studio. He was back on the transport ship, 40 years younger, surrounded by 2,000 Kethvari soldiers ready for glory. "We were sent to a human colony world called New Montana," he said. "It was a mining settlement on the edge of their territory. Our intelligence said they had 300 soldiers defending it. 300 against 2,000. Our commander called it target practice." He remembered the laughter on the transport, the jokes about how quickly they would finish. Some soldiers were already planning what they would do after the easy victory. The human commander was a woman named Kate Morrison. She held the rank of captain. Our spies sent us her image before we landed. She was small, even for a human. Brown hair, green eyes, a face that looked too young for war. Some of my fellow soldiers made jokes about her. They said she would run when she saw our ships. Zorath's hands tightened into fists. She did not run. None of them did. The landing had been smooth. Their dropships touched down outside the main settlement as the sun was setting. Zorath remembered stepping onto the alien soil and feeling confident. The air was thin and cold, and the rocky mountains around them were full of shadows. "The settlement was empty when we arrived," he continued. "No civilians, no soldiers, no movement at all. Just buildings and silence. Our commander said the humans had fled. He ordered us to secure the area and prepare for occupation." Yenna leaned forward. "But they had not fled." "No," Zorath said. "They were waiting. Captain Morrison had evacuated every civilian and hidden her soldiers throughout the mountains. We did not know it then, but we had walked into a trap." The first night was burned into his memory. They had set up camp in the settlement, confident and careless. Guards were posted, but no one expected trouble. Why would they? The humans were primitive and outnumbered. "We lost 40 soldiers before sunrise," Zorath said. His voice was quiet now, heavy with old grief. "They died without a sound. One moment a soldier would be standing at his post, and the next he would fall with a hole through his armor. We heard nothing. No weapons fire, no explosions, just silence and death. He explained that humans had weapons called suppressed rifles. They made almost no sound when fired. In the darkness of an alien night, they were invisible killers. We searched for them, Zorath said. We sent patrols into the mountains. They found traps instead. Explosive devices buried in the ground. Wires that triggered alarms and weapons. Holes covered with thin material that dropped soldiers into pits. The humans had prepared for months. They knew every rock, every shadow, every path through those mountains. By the third day, fear had begun to spread through the battalion. Soldiers who had laughed about easy victory were now jumping at sounds. Sleep became impossible. Every shadow might hide a human with a rifle. Then they captured one of them, Zorath said. A young human male named Danny Cole. He was a scout, caught alone when his equipment failed. Our commander thought we could get information from him. He thought torture would break the human quickly. Yenna's orange eyes were wide. What happened? Zorath shook his head slowly. The human did not break. We did everything the interrogators knew. And he did not tell us anything useful. He just smiled through the pain. And when our commander demanded to know where his friends were, he said something I have never forgotten. What did he say? Zorath looked directly at the camera, his eyes distant and haunted. He said, "They are coming for me, and when they get here, you will wish you had killed me quickly." We thought it was empty words. The bravery of a dying man. We were wrong. He fell silent, and the studio seemed darker than before. Yenna waited, her recording device capturing every moment of silence. That night, Zorath finally said, 4 humans came into our camp. Just 4. They killed 30 guards without making a sound, freed their friend, and disappeared into the mountains. We never saw them. We only found the bodies in the morning. He looked at Yenna with eyes that had seen too much. That was when I first understood. We had not come to conquer primitives. We had come to fight something far worse, something that would not stop, would not surrender, would not die quietly. He took a deep breath. That was my first lesson about humans. It would not be my last. Zorath shifted in his chair as the memories continued to pour out of him. Yenna had not moved since he started speaking. Her recording device captured every word, every pause, every tremor in his old voice. After they rescued their soldier, things changed, Zorath said. We were no longer hunters. We were prey. He described the days that followed. The Kethvari battalion tried to establish control of the settlement, but the humans made it impossible. Every patrol that went into the mountains came back smaller. Every night brought new attacks from directions they could not predict. The humans fought differently than any species we had conquered before, Zorath explained. The Velthari had faced us with honor. Army against army in open battle. The Kreen had relied on their numbers, throwing waves of soldiers at our lines. But humans did not fight fair. They did not fight with honor. They fought to win. Captain Kate Morrison had turned the rocky terrain into a weapon. Her 300 soldiers moved like ghosts through the mountains. They struck at night, at dawn, during dust storms, whenever the Kethvari were weakest. They never attacked the same way twice. I remember one morning, Zorath said, when we found one of our supply vehicles destroyed. The humans had somehow gotten past our guards, planted explosives under the vehicle, and left without being seen. They took nothing. They just wanted us to know they could reach us whenever they wanted. The psychological effect was devastating. Soldiers started seeing humans in every shadow. Some refused to sleep, terrified of being killed in their rest. Others wanted to retreat, to leave this cursed world and never return. Our commander refused to retreat, Zorath said. He was proud. He said we could not be beaten by 300 primitives. He called for reinforcements and promised the high command that New Montana would fall within days. But the days turned into weeks, and the humans only grew bolder. Zorath told Yenna about a soldier named Sergeant Ben Harper. The Kethvari had learned his name from intercepted communications. He was a large human, older than most of his fellow soldiers, with gray in his hair and a voice that carried across the battlefield. "We ambushed his squad in a narrow canyon," Zorath said. "It was the first time we had caught humans in the open. We had them surrounded, outnumbered 10-1. Our commander was pleased. He thought we would finally have a victory to report. The battle lasted less than an hour. The humans found cover among the rocks and returned fire with deadly accuracy. Kethvari soldiers fell one after another, picked off by shooters they could barely see. Then Sergeant Harper was hit," Zorath continued. "2 bullets struck his body. I saw it happen. I saw the blood spray from his wounds. Any Kethvari soldier would have fallen and waited for medical help. But Harper did not fall. The human sergeant kept fighting. He moved through the chaos, shouting orders to his squad, firing his weapon with steady hands. When one of his soldiers was wounded, Harper ran into open ground to drag him to safety. More bullets hit him, but he did not stop. He saved 4 of his soldiers that day," Zorath said. "He carried them on his back while bleeding from wounds that should have killed him. When the fighting ended and his squad escaped, Harper finally collapsed. We learned later that he survived. The humans have medical technology that can repair almost any damage to their bodies." Yenna looked disturbed. "How can a creature keep fighting with such injuries?" Zorath made a sound that was almost like a laugh. "That is what we asked ourselves. Our scientists studied human biology after the war. They discovered something terrifying. Humans can ignore their own pain. Their brains can shut off the signals that tell them to stop. They call it adrenaline, or willpower, or simply being stubborn. Whatever the name, it means a human will keep fighting long after any other species would surrender." He told her about another incident, one that still haunted his dreams. A young Kethvari soldier named Veth had been separated from his patrol and wounded. He lay in a ditch, bleeding and afraid, certain that the humans would find him and kill him. "A human did find him," Zorath said. "A medic named Amy Santos. She was small, with dark hair and kind eyes. When she saw Veth, she did not shoot him. She knelt beside him and began treating his wounds." Yenna's eyes widened. "She helped an enemy?" "Yes. Veth told us the story after he was rescued. He asked the human why she was helping him. She said something he did not understand at first. She said, 'Because that is what we do.' Then she bandaged his wounds, gave him water, and disappeared into the mountains." Zorath shook his head slowly. "We later learned that Amy Santos had been shot twice during that rescue. She treated Veth while bleeding from her own injuries. She then walked 3 miles back to her base, treated herself, and returned to combat duty within hours." The story had spread through the Kethvari ranks like a virus. Some soldiers were confused. Why would an enemy show mercy? Others were frightened. What kind of creature could take bullets and keep walking? A few, like Zorath, began to feel something they had never felt before: respect. After 6 weeks, our commander finally called Captain Morrison, Zorath said. He demanded her surrender. He told her that reinforcements were coming, that her position was hopeless, that her people would all die if they continued fighting. Zorath paused, and his old eyes grew distant. Morrison's response came through the radio clear as crystal. She did not sound afraid. She did not sound tired. She sounded almost amused. She said, "You have lost over 600 soldiers trying to take this rock. I have lost 12. If you want to send more of your people to die, that is your choice. But know this: we do not surrender. We do not retreat. And we do not forget." The commander had cut the transmission in rage. He swore he would make the humans pay for their arrogance. He ordered a full assault on the mountain positions the next morning. "That assault was the worst day of my life," Zorath said quietly. "We sent 800 soldiers into those mountains. Less than half came back. The humans had prepared for us. Traps, ambushes, snipers, explosives. They killed us in ways we had never imagined." He looked at Yenna with haunted eyes. "And through it all, we never saw more than 50 humans at once. 300 soldiers held off 2,000 for 6 weeks, killed over 1,000 of us, and never once showed fear. Yenna was silent for a long moment. What happened next? Zorath took a deep breath. Our commander received word that reinforcements would not come. The war was spreading. Humans were fighting back on every front. The High Command had no soldiers to spare for one mining colony. He closed his eyes. That was when Morrison contacted us again. She did not demand surrender. She did not threaten us. She simply said, "We can end this now. Or we can keep killing each other. Your choice." And then she said something that I will remember until I die. What did she say? Zorath opened his eyes. She said, "Let us do this the hard way." Zorath reached for a glass of water on the table beside him. His hands were shaking again. Yenna noticed but said nothing. She simply waited for him to continue. "You must understand something about my people," Zorath said after taking a drink. "The Kethvari require 12 hours of sleep every cycle to function. Our bodies are not like human bodies. Without proper rest, we become slow, confused, and weak. After 3 days without sleep, most of us cannot even hold a weapon." He set the glass down and looked at Yenna with tired eyes. "Humans are different. They can survive on something called catnaps. Short periods of rest. Sometimes just minutes at a time. They have drugs that keep them awake and alert. A human can function for days without real sleep and still fight effectively." Yenna made a note on her device. "That seems impossible." "I thought so too," Zorath replied, "until they proved it to us." He described what his people came to call the Long Night. It began on the 43rd day of the campaign. The sun had just set when the first attack came from the eastern mountains. A small team of humans struck a supply depot, destroyed it, and vanished before the Kethvari could respond. "We thought it was just another raid," Zorath said. "We had learned to expect them." But then another attack came from the west, and another from the north, and another from the south. They kept coming, one after another, from every direction, all through the night. The Kethvari tried to rest in shifts, but the humans would not allow it. Every time a group of soldiers tried to sleep, an explosion or gunfire would wake them. The attacks were not large enough to cause serious damage, but they were constant and unpredictable. The first night turned into the second day, and the attacks continued, Zorath said. Our soldiers were exhausted. Some were making mistakes, shooting at shadows, tripping over their own feet. But the humans showed no signs of stopping. He explained that the human soldiers were rotating. Fresh teams would attack while others rested. The Kethvari could not tell how many humans they were fighting because the same faces kept appearing in different places. By the second night, soldiers were collapsing, Zorath continued. Not from wounds, but from exhaustion. Their bodies simply refused to keep going. And still, the humans attacked. They gave us no peace, no rest, no moment to recover. The commanders tried everything. They organized defensive positions that required fewer soldiers. They pulled units back to create safe zones for sleeping. Nothing worked. The humans always found a way through. I remember a young soldier named Dreth, Zorath said quietly. He was my friend. We had trained together, served together for 3 years. On the third night of the attacks, he fell asleep at his guard post. He was so tired that his body gave up. Zorath's voice became heavy with old grief. A human sniper shot him before he could wake up. I found his body the next morning. He looked peaceful, like he was still sleeping. But he was gone. Yenna lowered her recording device for a moment. I am sorry. Zorath nodded slowly. Dreth was not the only one. We lost over 200 soldiers during the long night. Some were killed in attacks. Others simply collapsed and never got up again. Our medical officers said their bodies had shut down from exhaustion. He told her about the breaking point. It came on the third night, 72 hours after the attacks began. The Kethvari were barely functional. Soldiers stumbled around like walking dead. Officers screamed orders that made no sense. The chain of command had fallen apart. That was when Lieutenant Chris Donovan came, Zorath said. The name carried weight, even after 40 years. We learned his name later, from survivors who had seen his face and lived to describe it. Donovan had led a squad of 12 humans directly into the Kethvari command center. They came during a sandstorm, when visibility was nearly zero, and the guards were blind and exhausted. I was there, Zorath said. I saw him come through the door. He was average height for a human, with short brown hair and pale eyes that showed no fear. His soldiers followed him like shadows, moving in perfect coordination. The fighting inside the command center was brutal and close. Kethvari soldiers tried to stop the humans, but they were too tired and too slow. Donovan and his team moved through them like wind through tall grass. Our battalion commander tried to fight Donovan directly, Zorath said. He was twice the human size, with 4 arms and natural armor. In a fair fight, he should have won easily, but the fight was not fair. Donovan was fast, precise, and completely without mercy. He dodged the commander's attacks and struck back with a combat knife. The blade found gaps in the armor, weak points that no enemy had ever exploited before. Donovan killed our commander with that knife, Zorath said. He took 11 wounds during the fight. Cuts, bullets, a broken arm. When it was over, he was covered in blood, both his own and others, and then he walked out of that command center on his own feet. Yenna shook her head in disbelief. How is that possible? I do not know, Zorath admitted. I have asked myself that question for 40 years. How can a creature so small and fragile fight like that? How can they take so much damage and keep going? I have never found an answer that satisfies me. The death of their commander broke the battalion completely. The remaining officers called for retreat. Dropships were summoned, and the surviving Kethvari fled New Montana in disgrace. We left behind over 1,000 dead, Zorath said. More than half our original force. And the humans lost only 37 soldiers during the entire campaign. 37 against 1,000. Those numbers tell you everything you need to know. He was quiet for a moment, lost in memories of that terrible retreat. The shame of running from an enemy they had expected to crush. The confusion of losing to creatures they had considered inferior. That was the first time a Kethvari battalion had ever retreated from a primitive species, Zorath said. The news spread through the Empire like wildfire. Some refused to believe it. Others demanded to know how such a disaster had happened. But those of us who had been there knew the truth. He looked directly at Yenna, his eyes old and tired and full of hard-earned wisdom. We had met humans, he said. And we had learned that they were not primitive at all. They were something else entirely. Something that our empire had never faced before. Something that did not know how to give up. Yenna waited. But Zorath said nothing more. He simply sat there, staring at something she could not see, remembering a night that had changed everything he believed about the universe. After the disaster at New Montana, Zorath was reassigned to other campaigns. The war had spread across dozens of star systems, and the Empire needed every soldier it could find. He spent the next 3 years fighting humans on worlds that were nothing like New Montana. I thought maybe New Montana was special, Zorath told Yenna. Maybe that one colony had unusually good soldiers. Maybe Captain Morrison was a rare genius. I hoped the other human worlds would be easier. He shook his head slowly. I was wrong. Everywhere we went, the humans fought the same way. With everything they had. With tactics we had never seen. With a refusal to surrender that bordered on insanity. Zorath described the ocean world of Pacifica. The Empire had sent a fleet to capture the underwater mining stations there. The Kethvari had assumed the humans would abandon the stations rather than fight in such a hostile environment. The humans did not abandon anything, Zorath said. They put on special suits and fought us under the water. The pressure at those depths would crush a Kethvari in seconds. But the humans had technology that let them survive. They swam through the darkness like fish, attacking our submersibles and disappearing into the black water. He remembered the fear of fighting in an environment where he could not breathe, could not see, could not even move properly. The humans seemed to be everywhere, and nowhere at once. We lost 8 ships on Pacifica, Zorath continued. The humans lost 2 stations. They considered it a victory. Then there was the frozen moon of Ericsson's Landing. The temperatures there dropped low enough to freeze Kethvari soldiers inside their armor. Supply lines constantly failed because equipment broke in the cold. Most commanders considered the moon worthless and wanted to bypass it entirely. The humans had built a research base there, Zorath explained. Just 200 scientists and a small security force. Our commanders thought it would be an easy target. A way to restore morale after so many defeats. The assault lasted 3 weeks. The humans used the cold as a weapon, luring Kethvari patrols into areas where heating equipment failed. They set traps in the ice that swallowed entire squads. They fought in blizzards that blinded sensors and froze exposed skin. By the end, we controlled the base, Zorath said. But it cost us 700 soldiers. The humans evacuated their scientists and left us with a frozen ruin. Another victory that felt like defeat. He told Yenna about the space battles too. The Kethvari Navy had always been the pride of the Empire. Their ships were larger, faster, and better armed than anything the humans had. In the early days of the war, the admirals had promised quick victories among the stars. Then we met Commander Ryan Peters, Zorath said. The name still carried weight. Even in death, Peters had commanded a human cruiser called the Steadfast. During a battle near a human colony, his ship was crippled by Kethvari weapons. The engines were destroyed. Life support was failing. Most of the crew was dead or wounded. Any sensible commander would have surrendered, Zorath said. The battle was lost. His ship was dying. There was no hope of victory, but Peters did not surrender. Instead, he ordered his remaining crew to abandon ship. Then he turned the Steadfast toward the largest Kethvari carrier in the fleet and pushed the broken engines to full power. He sent one final transmission, Zorath said quietly. 3 words that the translators could not understand at first. See you in hell. We learned later that hell is a human concept, a place of fire and punishment where evil souls go after death. Peters was telling us that he would drag us there with him. HR. The Steadfast struck the carrier at full speed. The explosion destroyed both ships and killed over 3,000 Kethvari sailors. Peters died alone on his bridge. But he died on his own terms. After that, we learned to fear humans in space as much as on the ground, Zorath said. They did not fight to survive. They fought to win. Even if winning meant dying. As the war continued, a human general named Diana Wells became famous among the Kethvari. She commanded the human forces on the border worlds and seemed to know what the Empire would do before they did it. Our admirals would plan an attack in secret, Zorath explained. They would choose a target, gather ships, prepare for months. And when they finally moved, Wells would be waiting. Her fleets would appear exactly where they needed to be. Her soldiers would be dug in and ready. It was like she could read our minds. Some Kethvari officers believed she had spies in the high command. Others thought she had access to technology that could see the future. The truth, Zorath learned later, was simpler and more frightening. Wells studied us, he said. She read everything about Kethvari history, culture, and military doctrine. She learned how our commanders thought, what strategies they preferred, what mistakes they tended to make. And then she used that knowledge to predict our every move. Yenna made a note. She understood you better than you understood yourselves. Yes, Zorath agreed. And that is perhaps the most terrifying thing about humans. They are not just good at fighting. They are good at learning. They adapt to every situation. They find weaknesses we do not even know we have. By the 3rd year of the war, the Empire was losing. Not quickly, not dramatically, but steadily. Every battle cost more than it gained. Every victory came with a price too high to pay. The humans were not conquering Kethvari space. They were simply making it too expensive to hold. I attended a military briefing near the end, Zorath said. Our analysts were trying to explain human psychology to the admirals. They spoke of concepts like home and family and freedom, things that humans would die for without hesitation. He remembered the confusion in that room. The Kethvari fought for the Empire, for duty, for glory. They did not understand creatures who fought for something as simple as protecting their homes. One analyst said something that I have never forgotten, Zorath continued. He said the most terrifying thing about humans is that every single one believes they can make a difference. A single human soldier believes that their actions matter, that they can change the outcome of a battle, a campaign, even a war. And because they believe it, they fight as if it is true. Yenna considered this. And that belief makes them dangerous? Zorath nodded slowly. It makes them unstoppable. An army that fights for orders can be broken. An army that fights for belief cannot. He fell silent, remembering all the humans he had seen die during the war. They had fallen by the thousands, just like Kethvari soldiers. But they had never stopped coming, never stopped fighting, never stopped believing that they could win. That, Zorath said quietly, is why we chose peace. The studio had grown very quiet. Yenna had stopped taking notes. She simply sat and listened as Zorath approached the end of his story. The old veteran seemed tired now, his shoulders bent under the weight of memories. You asked me earlier why we signed the peace treaty, Zorath said. I have shown you the battles, the deaths, the lessons we learned. But the true answer is simpler than all of that. He leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. The Empire's council ran the numbers near the end of the 3rd year. They calculated how long it would take to defeat the humans completely. The answer was 50 years. Half a century of continuous war. Yenna's eyes widened. 50 years? With acceptable losses of 70% of our military, Zorath added. 70%. That meant losing most of our fleet, most of our soldiers, most of our ability to defend against other threats. We could beat the humans eventually, but we would destroy ourselves doing it. He lowered his gaze to meet hers. And the humans knew this too. They had run the same calculations. They understood exactly what it would cost us to win. Zorath described the final diplomatic meeting. A human representative named Scott Bradley had traveled to the Kethvari homeworld under a flag of truce. He was an older man, with gray hair and a calm voice that carried no emotion. Bradley stood before the council and spoke plainly, Zorath said. He did not threaten. He did not boast. He simply stated facts. He said, "You can beat us. We know this. But we will make sure you never recover. Every world you take will cost you 3 of your own. Every soldier you kill will inspire 10 more to fight. We do not surrender. We do not forget. We do not stop." The council had listened in silence. Some members were angry. Others were afraid. A few, the wisest ones, were simply tired. Then Bradley said something that changed everything. Zorath continued. He said, "We do not want your empire. We do not want your worlds. We only want to be left alone. Give us peace, and we will give you something more valuable than victory. We will give you trade, technology, and friendship." Yenna frowned. Friendship? After everything that happened? That is what the council asked, Zorath said. How could we be friends after so much blood had been spilled? Bradley smiled and said something very human. He said, "We are good at making enemies, but we are even better at making friends. Give us a chance, and you will see." The council had debated for 3 days. Some wanted to continue the war, no matter the cost. Others saw the wisdom in peace. In the end, the voices of reason won. The treaty was signed, and the war ended. The galaxy expected us to hate the humans forever, Zorath said. Many Kethvari did hate them. Some still do. But over the years, something strange happened. We began to understand them, and understanding turned into respect. He told Yenna about the decades that followed. Trade routes opened between human and Kethvari space. Scientists from both species worked together on research projects. Cultural exchanges allowed young people to learn about each other's worlds. My own daughter works on a joint space station now, Zorath said with a hint of pride in his voice. She designs engines alongside human engineers. She has human friends, human colleagues. She has never known war with them. Change? She has never known war with them. Yenna smiled slightly. That sounds like a good thing. It is, Zorath agreed. But it took a war to get there. It took thousands of deaths and years of suffering. I wish we had been wise enough to seek peace first. But perhaps that is not how history works. Perhaps some lessons can only be learned through pain. He reached into his belt and pulled out a small object. It was a photograph, creased and faded with age. Yenna leaned forward to look at it. Captain Kate Morrison, Zorath said. Admiral Morrison now. She retired 10 years ago. She sent me this picture on the 20th anniversary of the war's end. The photograph showed two figures standing together. One was a human woman with gray hair and smile lines around her green eyes. The other was a HFY veteran with scars across his shell. They were both holding glasses and grinning at the camera. She sent me a message with it, Zorath continued. It said, "No hard feelings. Let us grab a drink sometime." Yenna looked surprised. And did you? Zorath's mandibles curved into something that might have been a smile. Many times. She makes an excellent drinking companion. Terrible at cards, though. Humans bluff too much. He tucked the photograph back into his belt with gentle care. The gesture spoke of something that had grown over many years. Not quite friendship, but something close. Mutual respect between old enemies who had survived the same war. I am often asked what advice I would give to young species meeting humans for the first time, Zorath said. Leaders, diplomats, military officers, they all want to know the secret. How do you deal with humans? He turned to face the camera directly. His old eyes were sharp now, focused and intense. My advice is simple, he said. When you meet humans, smile. Be friendly. Offer them trade and cooperation. Learn their strange customs. Drink their coffee and laugh at their jokes. Accept their friendship when they offer it. His voice grew harder, carrying the weight of hard experience. And whatever you do, Zorath continued, do not give them a reason to fight. Do not threaten their homes. Do not harm their families. Do not make them your enemy. He leaned forward, his scars catching the light. Because they are small creatures, soft flesh, thin bones, short lives. They have no natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities. By every measure, they should be weak, but they are not weak. They are the most terrifying thing in this galaxy. Zorath sat back and let out a long breath. He suddenly looked very old, very tired, and very much at peace. The HFY Empire conquered 17 species before we met humanity, he said. We thought we knew what war was. We thought we understood strength. The humans taught us otherwise. Yenna turned off her recording device. The interview was over. But she had one more question. Do you regret the war? She asked. All the death? All the suffering? Do you wish it had never happened? Zorath was quiet for a long moment. He thought about Dreth, his friend who died sleeping at his post. He thought about the 1,000 soldiers left behind on New Montana. He thought about Commander Peters, dying alone on his burning ship. Then he thought about his daughter, laughing with her human friends. He thought about Admiral Morrison, buying him drinks and losing at cards. He thought about the peace that had lasted 40 years and showed no signs of ending. I regret the death, Zorath finally said. I regret the pain. But I do not regret what we learned. The humans showed us that the galaxy is bigger than conquest. They showed us that strength is not the only thing that matters. He stood slowly, his old joints creaking with the effort. At the door, he paused and looked back at Yenna. The humans have a saying, he said. They say that the best enemies make the best friends. I did not understand that once. Now I do. He walked out of the studio, carrying 40 years of memories and one faded photograph. Behind him, the recording light blinked off, and the story ended where all good stories end, with hope for something better.